Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Good evening, members. My name is Councillor Mark Evans, and I'll be chairing this planning committee meeting this evening. Just to remind you that the meeting is being recorded, and by your presence here, you consent to that process. And to remind you that any use to say will be immediately available in the public domain. So I've introduced myself. To my right,
I'm Councillor Bob Cope. I'm the Vice Chairman.
Annette Roberts, Corporate Director, Place and Communities.
Hardip Sharma, Planning Solicitor for the Authority.
Helen Benbow, Development Management Team Manager.
Rebecca Potter, I'm one of the planning officers.
Amanda Willis, Planning Support Team.
Okay, thank you for that. The first item is minutes. This is to approve the minutes of the meeting of the Planning Committee on the 21st of May 2024. Members, those minutes have been circulated. If you're present and you deem them of a true record of what took place, will you please signify? Thank you very much, members. We haven't got the original minutes with us this evening, but I will sign them at a later date. Okay, the next item is apologies. Now I understand the register is not here either this evening. I've got two apologies, which is Councillor Perry and Councillor Robert Reid. Is it any other apologies from the floor? Officers? No. Okay, we're okay with that. Item 3 is declarations of interest. Members, any member declaring an interest in these proceedings? Members? Okay, that's fine, thank you. So we move on to item 4, which is the determination of the planning applications. We have one application before this evening, members, and that is application number 23-01011 FUL 107 Springhill Lane, Lower Penn. And I understand, is that you, Helen, presenting that? So I'll ask Helen to present the application. Helen.
Thank you, Chair. The application relates to a traditional detached bungalow and associated outbuildings set within a generous plot on Springhill Lane in Lower Penn. The site is located within the West Midlands Greenbelt and forms part of an established ribbon of development comprising predominantly detached dwellings. Planning permission is sought for the demolition of the bungalow and its outbuildings and the erection of a replacement building which would provide an 8-bed care home, which will be 2-storey in part and in the main single storey, together with a new garage and storage outbuilding. This proposed use would provide respite care for up to 8 adults aged between 18 and 65 on a short-term basis to provide a break for their normal long-term caregiver. The duration of stay will vary from between 2 to 3 days to a few weeks. Staffing ratios will be based on individual need, but generally between 1 to 3 ratio on a rota basis, with staff changeovers typically occurring at 7 AM, 2 PM and 10 PM. Because the replacement property is not in the same use as the existing building, it is considered inappropriate development in the Greenbelt. As members are aware, in such cases, very special circumstances need to be considered to outweigh any harm. The applicant has advanced a case for very special circumstances on the basis of a planning permission that has recently been approved. This was in July of last year for a replacement dwelling. The approved dwelling would be identical in scale, bulk and mass to that which is currently proposed as part of the care home development, including the outbuildings. This application would therefore have no further harm to the openness of the Greenbelt than that of the works consented under this permission. This represents the fallback position in this case. Further, the proposed use would result in a similar pattern of activity, comings and goings as the approved large family home. The application would also allow for the provision of specialist housing accommodation, of which there is an identified need, and throughout the district on a previously developed site in line with policy H5. As such, very special circumstances are considered to exist in this case. Neighbouring occupiers have raised concerns regarding the suitability of the location, the commercialisation of a residential area, increase in noise and disturbance to surrounding residents, impact on the greenbelt, and highway safety matters. However, subject to the conditions recommended, it is not considered that the proposed use would result in any significant detrimental harm to neighbouring amenity, and there would be no adverse impact on the street scene or character of the area. The proposal also raises no material concerns with relation to car parking or highway safety. The use is also not considered to be out of character, given there is an existing care home next door to the site. At this point, I'll draw members' attention to the update list, which has some updated comments from the Highways Authority and a sentence on need provided by County Council. It's considered that very special circumstances have been advanced and clearly outweigh the limited harm to the proposal will cause to the openness of the Greenbelt, delivering a specialist housing need within the district, and approval is therefore recommended. So I'll just go through some of the site details. So this slide shows on the left-hand side the proposed site plan for the care home. On the right-hand side is the approved scheme for the dwellings, which is the fallback position. So that just wanted to demonstrate the scale is the same as the approved housing development. This is the proposed property. So you can see the single-storey wings and then the two-storey element to the centre. And then the proposed garage. So this is the site as it currently stands. It's the bungalow there on the left-hand side, and then when viewed from the highway on the right. The main view of Spring Hill, and then the bungalow there sitting centrally within the site. The view again, you can see the roof there from the highway across the planting. And then this photo shows one of the existing outbuildings that will be removed. Same view from further back into the site and then along Spring Hill Lane. Application is recommended for approval subject to conditions. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Ellen. So members, you've heard the application presented, and the recommendation is to approve subject to conditions. We do have a number of speakers, and I'm going to call upon Dr. Neil Barcher to speak first. Doctor. Doctor, there is a three-minute limit, and I will be quite strict with that. So.
Before I commence, ladies and gentlemen, I'd like to clarify that the objectors here are good people. We have strong morals and ethics. Every single person I have spoken to understands the need for respite care in the community. Lower Penn is a residential area with places with no footpath. That was evident in the photographs that you showed there. There are some dangerous areas already where just under 50 children reside and within 100 metres of that proposed development. We have no problem with there being a care home being situated further out where the amenities are more available to people with public transport. Our objections primarily relate to the fact that this will be an isolated development in a semi-rural, unsustainable location. There is no continuous pavement that links this site to Spring Hill or Wolverhampton, and thus public transport is inaccessible. There is no landscape garden area proposed for residents, and there has been no noise impact assessment provided. The achievement of sustainable development, ladies and gentlemen, is the cornerstone of planning decisions. Without demonstrating this, a development cannot be considered appropriate. Policy H5 states that specialist housing accommodation must be in sustainable locations, including brownfield redevelopment, and be in close proximity to public transport and facilities. The committee report correctly states that developments should be directed to the most accessible and sustainable locations, being main service villages, and developments should facilitate sustainable transport, have acceptable walking and cycle access, and be connected to local facilities. However, the assumption is made because it's in an area of urban development is therefore in a sustainable location, even though the report recognises there is no continuous footpath to facilities or public transport. Residents will be isolated on the site. They won't be leaving. And the employees are likely to be arriving by car because there is lack of public transport. There's a lack of understanding by the planning department in this instance to reach the conclusion that the site's sustainable potentials are positive when they are clearly not. The original planning development was for a residential home. This is for a care home. There will be, as you've said already, similar patterns of shift changes in a residential home. There is no people swapping over at 7 a.m. to 1 p.m. and whatever time. Sorry, I can't remember what the second one was. 2 p.m. Respite care does not mean there will be no visitation from medical professionals. The inverse is actually true. These people will need medical attention. They will need care. They will need clinical waste removal. They will need maintenance staff, and they will need family visitations. The report convolutes C3 and C2 developments. They have different impacts, hence why there are separate planning issues. They will need round-the-clock staffing. The applicants have already shown in their other care homes on the Penn Road that the levels of traffic that will be expected. Notwithstanding the fallback position of the previous planning permission for a single family dwelling, this does not imply that a CT use is acceptable. In addition, there have been several concerns raised over the procedure that's been followed in the application. The original case officer was abruptly changed, and whether it was predetermined that this application was
Doctor, I've got to interrupt you. The 3 minutes are up. Thank you very much for that well-informed
In
presentation.
conclusion, may I just say that we are strong in our opinion that this should be refused. Thank you very much for your time, ladies and gentlemen.
Thank you, Doctor. Our next speaker is Mrs. Val Danoa. Madam. And likewise, it's a 3-minute limit.
Balsno, Chief Executive of Progress Care Group. Whilst I welcome the feedback from the neighbours, I would reiterate that this is an 8-bedded home, which we invest in small homes to make it non-institutional. We're an established provider over the last 20 plus years in the area. Our head office actually is in Wolverhampton. We have an excellent record in maintaining quality care and small, homely, friendly luxury environments for all our young people with complex care needs. In terms of the pavement that is being referred to, our young people are so disabled that they perhaps would not be using the pavements without support. We will invest and we will have access to transport that is of a normal vehicle with mobility access to our homes, and that is how we operate all our homes. We do invest in quality areas because we very firmly believe our young people also have the right as citizens to live in their communities. They come to us for respite to enable breaks for their parents and carers. This is an essential resource that we require, and it actually meets the guidance of the Community Care Act. And in terms of medical care, that could happen to any family home with 8 family members living in that house anyway, so it's no different. And I think that this clinical waste, etc., is safely managed. In terms of the landscaping, we will provide excellent landscaping and interior designs of all our homes, in particularly this one because it will be a new build. And we haven't changed the structure externally at all. We respect the guidance and we will work with the guidance. We're a reputable company with an excellent record of achieving excellence in our care. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much, and thanks for keeping within the 3 minutes, I think.
Apologies for the lack of the timer there. That's the IT letting me down. Just trying to sort that out. Apologies, Chair.
Okay, now I'll invite Councillor Wilson to the stand. Councillor, just give us a second while we sort out the technology. Okay, Councillor Wilson, continue.
Thank you, Chairman. Good evening, members. The site at 107 Spring Hill Lane, Lower Pen, is situated just before Spring Hill Lane narrows to go onto the Conservation Village. It's within the green belt. It's surrounded by residential dwellings with a footpath on just one side of the road. The surrounding houses enjoy the peace and quiet of the countryside. Lower Pen is a Tier 5 hamlet categorised in the Rural Services and Facilities Audit. Tier 5 settlements are not intended to experience further housing or employment growth owing to their poorer sustainability credentials, poorer public transport links, and lack of services and facilities relative to other settlements within the district. This application contravenes a key NPPF policy relating to building in the green belt. Chapter 154 of the NPPF states a local planning authority should regard the construction of new buildings as inappropriate in the green belt, and exceptions to this are the replacement of a building provided the new building is in the same use and not materially larger than the one it replaces. The planning officer's report attached great weight to the fallback position permitted development rights of the bungalow. Clause 154D specifically states that the building should not be bigger than the one it replaces. The officer's report based on the fallback position would only apply for dwellings of the same use. No significance has been attached to the fact that a change of use is being considered. We have found recent case law that decided when assessing this type of development, the original building should be used as the starting point and not the potential fallback position. In the case of Guildford Borough Council versus the Secretary of State for Levelling Up, the judge noted that the original building is defined in the NPPF as a building that existed on the 1st of July 1948, or if constructed after that date, as was built originally. The judge further stated that it was clear that new buildings were permitted in Greenbelt only if it fell into one of the exceptions. In this case, it would mean that despite permitted development rights and a fallback position, the change of use is prohibited even after the new building has been erected, because when reassessing the original building footprint, this still has to be used. The original dwelling is a small 2-bedroom bungalow. Multiple planning applications have been submitted until consent was granted for a massive build, nearly 5 times as big as the original dwelling. Note that construction hasn't actually commenced yet, of course. The overall fallback position constitutes inappropriate impact on the openness of the green belt. To then agree to the change of use for this building to a commercial premises is a clear contravention of national policy. In approving this application, a precedent is set that allows the increase in commercialisation of residential areas. This commercialisation, in the absence of a robust approach to curb the exploitation of apparent planning loopholes, will spread across this district, and we will find that increasingly our neighbours are not residents and members of
Councillor Wilson, sorry, the 3 minutes up, sorry.
Thank you. Not members of the community, but employers and service users. Thank you very much, Chairman.
Thank you, Councillor. So members, you've heard the application as presented by Mrs. Bembo and 3 speakers. So now throw it open to yourselves to ask questions of the officers or make any comments or observations, members. Councillor Harper-Wallace.
Does the officers have an opinion around that case law judgment and a response back to that?
Chair, I can deal with that question. The councillor is absolutely right that this is a change of use application. Yes, in the report, it is made plain that when you're looking at the Greenbelt special circumstances aspect of it, we are talking about the impact on the openness, and the report clearly actually sets out that building A and building B do not actually impact on the openness. And then your report also makes it plain that the reason why this application is actually before you is because of the change of use. So I don't have any disagreement with what has actually been mentioned, because the report makes it plain that you are here today to actually consider the impact of the proposed use arising from the proposed development.
Thank you, Paul. To follow up on that, it's absolutely correct that if you look at the MPPF, it's an appropriate development in the Greenbelt for the reasons that we've talked about. But as members are aware, if it's inappropriate, we then move on to the next step, which is very special circumstances, and we have to determine whether they exist or not. So the case put forward for very special circumstances is that fallback position. There's been approvals for considerable extensions on the existing property. Then also in July of last year for the redevelopment of the whole site for one single new dwelling that is larger than what's there because of the fallback for the extensions. So the care home itself would be identical in size, height, scale and bulk than what's already been approved. And as you'll be aware, that gives it reasonable prospect for being approved, and therefore the weight we can give to the very special circumstances exists. So to build on that, that's why it's therefore appropriate in its location. Thank you, Chair.
Councillor Boyce, do you want to come back on that? Okay. Councillor Kelly.
Thank you, Chair. To Helen, you've already elaborated that the build is going to be bigger than the originally. And by how much is it more than the 30% normally required?
So it's the 30% is required, again, if you're falling within the remit of appropriate developments within the Greenbelt. So we're outside of those parameters. So what happened with the original bungalow was it had approval for various extensions, all appropriate, and then permitted development extensions, which we often know happens. So then that gives you your fallback position. What happened then was there was a replacement dwelling approved, taking into consideration all of those approvals, which was bigger, and that's approved. So that's an extant permission from July last year. And what is proposed before you today is identical in size to that fallback position. So the scale of the building that you are looking at today could be built as a residential dwelling, to be clear, not as a care home. So the main crux of the matter is the use that you're looking at today and the fact that we think the very special circumstances exist because of the approvals in place for the building. Thank you.
Councillor Bennett, do you want to come back on that?
So it's already got an extant element on it. It's fine.
Members? Councillor Duncan?
Yeah, Chair. My only concern is if it was approved, what is the potential for further expansion of the dwelling?
Helen?
Thank you, Chair. No permitted development rights would exist. We would make certain of that if there was an approval tonight. So any further application would need a further planning application, and then it would have to be assessed on its merits. As you're aware, when it comes to Greenbelt extensions, we look at what's happened in the past. So whilst we would have to look at each case on its merits, as we have to, and we're duty bound to, obviously the fallback exists today. Thank you, Chair.
Councillor Duncan, you okay with that? Members, any other questions or observations? Councillor Steele.
Thank you, Chairman. I'm slightly puzzled because it's the code is 23/01011 FUL, and I always thought change of use was COU. So can you explain why it's full application and not a change of use application, please?
Thank you, Councillor Steele. Helen, take that.
Through you, Chair, yeah, of course. It's because we're demolishing what's there and it's a rebuild. So whilst it's a rebuild and a change of use, it's a full planning application, not just a change of use. If we were changing the use of an existing building and the existing fabric, then it would be COU. But if it's demolition and rebuild, it classes as a full. So therefore it has the suffix FUL. Thank you, Chair.
So it's not straightforward, is it?
Okay, was that a question or an observation? Okay, thank you, Councillor Steele. Any other member? Councillor Holmes.
Chairman, given the lack of public transport, and the applicant did refer to it being for children, although the ages were given 8 to 65, did you say? 18 to 65, yes. Will they be taken to school on a daily basis, for instance, and brought back, presumably by traffic for each child? yeah, transport for each child separately. I'm just concerned about the nuisance with the extra transport problems. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Holmes. I think that's something we need to clear up. Is it for children or 18 to 65?
Absolutely. The application, to be clear, is for 18 to 65, so there will be no school-age children attending, so they won't be coming and going backwards and forth for schooling. And to be clear, this is not a residential care home in its true sense, it's for respite care. So the residents here will be going to this property for 2 to 3 days or up to a couple of weeks while their substantive carers have a rest, have a break, have a holiday. So this isn't actually where they would live and reside. They would go here for a short period of time while their full-time substantive carers get a break. Does that help?
Entitled to further education over 18, and it can involve extra traffic. That's all I was concerned about. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Holmes. Councillor Duncan.
Yeah, my next question really is there a particular reason it's being situated in this particular location? Can you sort of just go through the reasons for this location?
Helen?
Yeah, through you, Chair, it's not for us to assess the location per se. Obviously, we have to assess what applications come before us on their merits. We consider it to be a suitable location. There is a residential care home immediately next door, and it is within a ribbon development. So we wouldn't dictate as the planning department where this nature of care in such a small scale should go. It's just for us to assess it on its merits. Thank you, Chair.
Councillor Duncan.
The only reason I was asking that, not as a planning consideration, but if it was known why this location was picked, is it because it's near to the people that they want the respite for?
The only thing I can add to that is it's a local business based in Wolverhampton, so within the vicinity, but I wouldn't know any further than that. Thank you.
Okay, Councillor Duncan. Councillor Hobbe-Wallace.
How many beds is the care home next to it?
Helen?
The premises next door, I'm not sure about that, but that's residential care for elderly residents. It's a different nature of care, but I wouldn't know. Let me just check, see if we'll see if we can find that out for you, but we're not aware at the moment. Sorry, Councillor.
Any other members want to ask any questions of the officers or make any observations or comments? Members. Councillor Bennett.
Thank you, Chair. Can I just ask, are there any other care facilities on Spring Hill Lane apart from the one that you've mentioned and the proposed one today? Thank you.
Heather?
I'm unaware if there is or there isn't. I know of the one immediately next door, obviously, as that's part of the immediate site context, but I'm not certain if there's any more on Spring Hill Lane. Thank you.
Members, any other member want to make any observations or ask any questions? Okay, then members, any member wish to debate this issue any further? Okay, then, so we'll move to vote, and I'm asking you to vote for, that's asking you to show if you're in favour of the application as the officer's recommendation. So the vote is if you're in favour of the application, members. Thank you, members. Any member voting against the application? That's none. Any abstain? Thank you, members. That application has been approved, and thank you very much for the debate and in the manner in which it was conducted. Thank you. Ladies and gentlemen, the meeting does continue, but you are quite welcome to leave. The next item on the agenda is the monthly update. I suspect that's in the hands of, is that you in it? Oh, Helen, sorry, go on.
Thank you, Chair. So in terms of monthly updates, just to let you know that we managed to appoint to the temporary 2-year contract for the Digital Improvement Officer. We've got a person in post as of August, so this is looking to put a lot more of our planning data publicly accessible. So it's a very positive project for our customers and residents alike. Just wanted to touch on the training schedule. I'm going to have to amend it slightly because of council meeting in July. So there will be following training after that, August, September, which will likely be on trees and arboriculture, and then Pardip and I are going to do a session on planning conditions. But again, my regular plea, if there's any particular topics you'd like to see, please just let me know and we'll factor those in for you. There is a ministerial statement that I wanted to draw your attention to. It was emailed out to you at the end of May, which relates to best and most versatile lands, and an update there from central government. So if you haven't had a chance to read that yet, I would ask that you do. And then in terms of appeals, I don't intend to go over all of them, but you will note that there was a few in this suite of batch that we had from PINs that were dismissed and allowed. And I just wanted to pick out a couple for you, which was, bear with, I've got them out of order. 69 Chapel Lane in Codsall, which was allowed. This was based on character, design and appearance. So a subjective matter. We didn't agree with the planning inspectorate, but as we all know, design and visual appearance can be subjective. So that was very much put down to judgment. Granary Cottage in Dark Lane was also allowed, which was an extension in the green belt. Officers felt that it was overly large and not proportionate, but the inspector did not agree. Again, judgment was used there. It was outside of the percentages, but ultimately it's a judgment for the decision maker. Land between Sanderford Cottage and Holly Lane. So this is another one in Coven that related to a new dwelling. And this was a disagreement about the location again of the village and an unsustainable location. The inspector found that because there was a public house immediately opposite, that the location was sustainable. This was not something that officers shared a view with. And then the last one was the site in Finley Barnes, Church Road in Swindon. And this was for an agricultural building that officers did not consider to be within agricultural use. And we didn't feel it had been evidenced substantially, but the inspector did not agree. So a few there that I just wanted to flag with you, which demonstrate a difference on view when the decision maker. But the fundamental thing is nothing that is going to change our approach, because we do see some of those as outlier decisions. That's it for me, Chair. Thank you.
Thank you, Ellen, for that update. Any members want to ask any questions? Councillor Steele.
That's an interesting one about the location that was opposite the pub. The pub's changed hands about 5 times and shut down nearly every year for the last 5 years. So that's interesting, isn't it?
For what it's worth, I agree, and I don't think a public house in isolation could be the provision that somebody needs for day to day. Whilst I appreciate the need for going out for a meal and a drink, it's kind of beyond that, isn't it, when you need to be able to service a property. So that was the very reason why officers didn't agree with that approach. So yeah, thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Ellen. Thank you, Councillor Steele. Any other members? Councillor Kelly.
Thank you, Helen. You referenced the best and versatile land. There's been some cases on the appeal recently put out. I think there was one up in Stoke where for solar panels, and that was high versatile land, and that was overturned. Can you just elaborate more on the best and versatile element on that?
Thank you. I would love to. We could have a whole session on this, couldn't we? It's a difficult matter. Best and most versatile land, as you're all aware, it's graded as to its standard, and if it is considered to be best and most versatile, it's where we would expect a lot of food growth and production to come from. In the planning balance, it's an important material consideration, but it has to go in the mix with every other material consideration. Impact on the landscape, any noise impacts, highway safety, construction method. and there's differing views coming out of PINS, I think it's fair to say. As a profession, we've kind of been longing for a clearer steer. The ministerial statement helped to a degree, but again, not to the level we would have ideally have liked. It's very much down to the decision maker as to where they apportion weight. And in South Staffordshire, we do have a lot of best and most versatile land, and I think that's being used as the tool by a lot of developers. And we have got sites currently on our books that are proposing a loss of 100% of the best and most versatile land, and we'll have to take each of those on its merits. So I apologise, I don't have a straight and honest answer for you, because every case is so different in terms of individual planning considerations and bespoke needs to that site. Thank you then.
Councillor Kelly. Members, any other questions for Helen? Councillor Steele, there was the gazillion about it.
Thanks, Chairman. It's not a question, it's an observation. We're the decision makers and we make the decision on the planning balance, and we apply the weight. You've just got to remember that. I can't really say, I'm not going to say anymore, but we make that decision.
Thank you, Councillor Steele. Councillor Spruce.
Just out of interest, do we know how much grey belt we have? I just think we might need to know in the future.
I'm going to give you the tongue-in-cheek answer. Once we have a definitive definition of grey belt, I may be able to inform you on that one. But it was only a term that I became aware of less than a week ago. So yeah, it's sent some ripples through the planning world, as you can imagine. But once we have a definition, we'll look into that further.
Councillor Spruce, do you know something we don't that's going to happen in the next few weeks? Members, unless there's any other questions or observations, I'll close the meeting at 7:07. Thank you very much for attendance and have a safe journey home.